Hey guys, it's time to talk about garden journaling. How I use my journal, some tips and ideas for you, and probably an idea or two that you didn't even think about. And I don't know if you can hear that, but Gertie is going to town on one of her bones, so she's making a whole bunch of gnawing noise. I'm sorry about that. Okay, so I've had quite a few people in the comments ask what journal I'm using, how am I keeping track of things, and I am a person that likes to write, and I like to open a book and visually look at what I've written. I also do have like my notes and stuff in my phone, and I've tried using the apps before, but for whatever reason, I do prefer to write stuff down. I think that the act of writing it helps to lock stuff in my brain as well. So even when taking notes to remember something, it really helps, at least me. So for last year and this year so far, I do have this 5-year garden journal. If I can find it, if they still sell it, I will link it in the description below. I bought it on Amazon. It is not perfect. I've yet to find one that I really felt was perfect for me. So I'm not saying that this is going to be the answer to all of your garden planting needs, but using this, and then I also have notebooks, and I write all kinds of stuff in my notebooks. I have a lot more free space that way to kind of write stuff down and not be, forced into a block or a box or just one page for some information. So I've also started trying to create my own using the Happy Planner type of discs, but they're the knockoff discs, but they're still really cute. And using my Cricut to design and see that, like so, design pages that I want for the future as I'm doing this, that would be really useful for me. Like on my seeds page, I have 2 sides because it's small, but even if it wasn't a small size journal, I would still do 2 pages because in it I have the name of the seed, the date that I've sown it, the method that I use to sow it because I use different methods, when it germinated, when I transplanted it, and when I started harvesting it. And then I said next year with a question mark. So is it something that I would actually tell my future self I should sow it again? So it's all that information is in 1 or 2 pages. And then I have pages just like the garden this week, my to-do list, maybe so little slots for like pictures, whether I'm going to draw them because I like to sketch a lot, or remember how I was saying in another video, in the catalogs, sometimes I just like to cut out the pictures and use them for making arts and crafts. So that's a pretty picture. I could use that, and just for a little bit of beauty, what if I glue that into that block? I don't know. I thought that would be cool. So I have a bunch of little images like this. I actually grew these this year, but this is also in a catalog, the Nigella Love in a Mist, which that one looks like it has some other stuff in there, but it's including it. And I wanted to do this, but this year I'm avoiding spending money on non-essential things, including seeds. And I have plenty of flower seeds. It may not be that perfect one, but I do have flower seeds that I can sow without buying new ones. So I'm gonna end up creating pages throughout this year that I wished I would have had in this one, and then hopefully by next year I'll either use it in this little size, which I like because this is easier to just take out with me. It's not as big. And I'm also going to do my budgeting stuff within the same book because I'm going back and forth between my garden journal and my budgeting book. So why not put them both in one? And with the Happy Planner, type of rings, I can just take pages out and put new ones in. So if I, want to trade them out for the next year, or I didn't think that page was really useful, let me try something different, I can put them in. I like that. That's pretty cool. I'm going to end up putting cool decorations on it, but I just started working on this project, and honestly, I've been doing tons of quilting and other crafting projects. So I love quilting. So last year I used the expenses pages to put all of the seeds. I didn't use it like expenses, like this would be good for my budget planner, but I literally crossed one of the lines out that said expenses and put flowers or annual veg or something like that, or my perennials. I bought perennial plants. I wanted to document what perennials, like a limelight hydrangea that I had bought. Well, I wrote that in here, when I had gotten it and when it's going to bloom. So I did like the type of plant it was, how tall it's going to get, the category if it's perennial or annual, what time of year it blooms, and then I put if it needs full shade, full sun, part sun, that kind of thing. So I use those categories that were in here for different purposes. So these pages were pretty helpful. They are projects to complete, and it'll have like the project, your deadline, and the tasks that like you can design this however you want, but the details within that task to get, the details within the project as tasks to get the job completed, whether that's a timeline, like this one week I'm gonna go purchase the wood to build a new raised garden bed, and then I'm going to build it the next week, and then I'm going to fill it with soil the next week, and then I could break down the cost for that project as well. I had like infrastructure for the cottage garden out front, like what I needed to do. I needed to dig the walkway, and so I needed to grade it out, pour the sand and the stone, plan and implement a water catch area where the walkway would finish, how that would disperse then into, because the walkway that we installed is also like irrigation, because on the way that the front yard, it was kind of going back towards the house. So we dug out a trench area and then made it so that the water would go down into the trench area, but it also is a walking path because we put it with some pretty decent sized stone in there so that water could still go into it, and then leveled it out so it would direct it then out further away from the house to trees and stuff that were on the tree line there. So it would get used a little bit more efficiently than going towards our house and maybe ending up in our basement. Now this book has a bunch of different grid pages depending on how you like to grid. I didn't use these. I don't know why. There's different ones like this, numbered. I had on a separate piece of paper in one of my other notebooks where I had sketched out all my garden spaces. So I use a graph paper and a ruler and a pencil at first, and then mark out, like on this one, I'm doing my 4x8 beds, and I'm using 4 of the little blocks equals a foot, so that I can make it larger. Last year I made it a little smaller, and it was hard to indicate like how many plants are going in here and there. So I'm making it a little bit larger this year. And then the one I'm drawing now is my strawberry bed. It's a galvanized, and even though I know it's always strawberries in there, I'm going to draw it in anyway, because what if I change it in the future to something else? So I have 4 4x8s, the strawberry galvanized bed. Hey guys, if you haven't subscribed already, please consider doing so. It's free to you and priceless to our little channel. Thank you. Okay, so I finished drawing this out. I have the 4x8 raised beds, and I have the strawberry galvanized raised bed, 3 feet by 6 feet, maybe a little bit more raised bed. And I have a cattle panel that we arched from two of the beds. Then we have another like oval shaped bed that we had created with stone edging. It's about 8 inches tall. And then it has an 18-inch like little fencing around it, because we have some pretty heavy bunny pressure in our backyard and front yard for that matter. And then a little further back, I have it placed in on the graph paper, like lined up with these beds, but it's really off to the one side, and it's on each side of the sidewalk. I have about, I'd say, 4 by 6 foot beds. And then I have a cattle panel that arches up over the sidewalk to each one of those. And last year we did loofahs on them. I think this year we're going to do some kind of cucumbers or yard-long beans maybe. And I'll go over the frames of these with a darker color. That way, next year, all I have to do then is trace over this. And then even though it'll be on this, I can still see where I'm going to put my vegetables next year. Kind of like this. So this is the front garden, cottage garden when I was designing it, and it's done pretty well. It's pretty much done exactly what I intended. Now I did sketch it out. I measured everything so it was perfect to size. The house is here and this is the sidewalk. Now I was messing with some ideas of how I wanted it to look, and I color coordinated it. I made a little color grid up here of, you know, what each color meant, and then it overlays over top. So I did end up doing it, you know, exactly like this. I did it in these colors with stone because it is a path, but also a drainage. I did end it actually here, and I arched it more so that it drains to the large trees that are over here. This is a very shaded spot right here. So underneath, you can see that I went like this lightly over it to indicate that anything that's going to grow over here will need shade, like be able to be in full shade. So I grew flowers, and each color kind of indicated either an annual or a perennial or a shrub. I have 2 whiskey barrels with bushes in them. And then I did put my stepping stones to get back because I espaliered pear tree here and one over here on the other side of the sidewalk. And then I will end up adding the walkway or drainage way and walkway back to come this way, and then one day we'll have more of a shade garden back here and around here. So I marked in also, I have some larger perennial shrubs in here already that aren't going to be moved, so I didn't bother coloring them in at the point. But this is actually going to be mostly a vegetable garden for the 2025 growing season, because any vegetables I grew in this area were amazing. This is pretty much full sun all the time. It was just an amazing growing area. I already have my garlic growing over here. I do have plenty of little perennial herbal, you know, remedy type of perennial plants growing through here. But I will have a lot of extra growing space for, like, I'm gonna put onions in there because the onions did really good. I'm gonna have plenty of other vegetables. I had peppers in here that did really good. So I need to take this into consideration. So for this year, all I'm gonna do is come over here with this, and I could use my ruler if I want, but I'm going to, let me use my ruler. I like to have the straight lines. And then I know there's a sidewalk area over there that I'm not going to grow in any of this because this is all shade. And then I'm going to actually overlay it over this one because we have the addition of the walkway that we added. So I'm going to overlay on top of that as well. Yep, we're right here. And we did put stone here too around the house. And then I'm going to mark that out. I'm going to remember that I do have a bit of a correction, and it kind of goes like that. And it's like that. And then I do still have it arched this way, this growing bed. So it's pretty much, I'm still going to leave that in there. This is still lower, even though there's no stone path. This is lower, and I keep it that way so that it also continues to drain this way a little bit more. And then this area I'm a little suspicious to grow in because the people that own the allotment near us, they whack down any plants that we have right here, which sucks. There are some old peonies that I see coming up in the spring, and then the company that does all their grass comes in, and no matter how many times I've said something to them, they still end up weed whacking my plants down. So that's a battle anyway. This area is also hard for me to get to with my hoses from where my hose hookups are. So I don't have any drip systems, irrigation in. I literally go out and hose, which sucks when it's super hot out. Keep that in mind, because you are out there, no matter how tired you are from work, if you want your garden to do really well in the heat of summer when you haven't had rain in a long time, you still gotta come out and water your garden. So anything over here would have to be like extremely drought resistant, even though there is like kind of a drainage area here. So anything here, super drought resistant and not expensive, just in case if they weed whack too far over. And then this area here, even in here, I have to be a bit careful that I won't be able to reach as well with the hose. But this is all game. And then here, like I said, is my pear tree, which I've espaliered. But in this area, I have a lot of perennials in place that need some room to grow. I have perennials there and there. And then my little walkway that comes back to my pear tree. I have a perennial, I think there now, even though it shows as annuals, I have quite a few perennial plants like sedum and stuff like that in this area here. So I'm not gonna grow any annual veg. This is pretty much just flowers, but all of this is my whiskey barrel, takes up that corner there. Most of it, oh, and I did also put just some stepping stones that came in. They could be moved, but I like where they're at. And they're just kind of haphazard, but you know, in right about here, like that. So I can get into the center and harvest easily. So that's my growing space in the front yard area. Okay. So that's how I map out my garden spaces and start my planning, which is going to take me a while, and I'm probably going to go back and forth, and I'm going to end up redrawing on a ton of these, my, refiguring out how I want, where I want, and everything before I completely finalize it. So that'll happen. It doesn't happen on the first go around ever, but yeah, so I'm going to work on that. So there's pages where it's days of the week, and then what I plan on doing, and then I check it off when I actually get it done. But a lot of these pages, I didn't use them the way that it was intended. Let's see, there's note sections, and I did, experiment with the herbicide, persistent herbicides in our straw and hay, and I did an experiment on that. And then I put my notes, like how it went, when I started it, how many days later did I start noticing anything, or, positive or negative. I have a video on that too. I'll link that below. And then it has annual planner for each year. And I kind of started writing in, okay, I know I'm going to start onions. I'm going to start my winter sowing in January, February. I'm going to do more winter sowing. If I didn't do my onions yet, do my onions. And then peppers in February. And I kind of put it in the block where I intended it. Beginning of the month, end of the month, and middle of the month. And I put my peppers in the middle of the month. By the way, we're Pennsylvania, zone 7A. And yes, I'm going to start my pepper seeds. I can do it beginning, mid, late February, sometime in February. I want to get those done. And I have grow lights, so I do keep those in the house. I don't winter sow those. So one thing I started doing this year, and I'm probably going to do this every year from now on, is on some of my lined pages, I started already picking the recipes that I want to use for preserving. I'm thinking far out, because when it would come time to make some of my recipes, I didn't have all of the ingredients either ready, because they were needed to be grown at a different time of year. Like I had started them in spring and they were already died out by, August when I'm preserving something. So to help remind me that I need to start new fresh seeds, a succession of something, in order to have it as an ingredient in one of my recipes that I want to do. So, and also I put on here like how much of, say, tomatoes I'm gonna need. Like on this, I just want to do, like, I didn't do any jars of just like crushed tomatoes or whole tomatoes. I made like tons of sauce and salsa and stuff, but I didn't do any jars of just tomatoes, and I regret that. So there's so many things that I could have used and I had ended up buying, which drives me nuts. Do you know what I'm talking about? When you grew a ton of tomatoes, thought that you were preserving them in the ways that you were going to use them, and then you have to go buy tomatoes. It irritates me. I have tomato products in my pantry that are not in the way that I needed them, and it just drives me nuts to go to the store and hold up a can of crushed tomatoes and look at it knowing that I should have just canned these. What was I thinking? I had tons of tomatoes. I made extra tomato sauce because I had so many tomatoes. I made a bunch of salsa. But so I'm doing like crushed tomatoes, whole tomatoes. I'm going to be canning those. But I know that in the one recipe I'm going to use, I'm going to need essentially 3 pounds of tomatoes per quart. So I can start to kind of gauge like how many tomatoes I'm gonna need, how many pounds I'm gonna need to get from a tomato plant, which tomato plants give me the amount of pounds that I need, you know, like really great production. If I can get away with using, you know, like a beefsteak, not necessarily a paste tomato for something, I can plan this now by taking and writing down all the recipes for what I want to preserve in the fall or throughout summer, because I'll start preserving in summer. Well, heck, I start preserving in spring when I got fresh fruit growing, and I start making jams, jellies, and just like freezing and dehydrating fruits. So I start preserving pretty early. I'm writing down how many batches I want to make of each product as well. Just knowing how many historically, like jars of sauce, salsa, things of that nature that we actually use in our home throughout the year before we start getting the fresh in. So I'm writing that down so I'm not over, like, it's great to have like over make your sauces and then just using them the following year. But if I have to concentrate and make sure I get enough for the whole year, make sure I make all those batches I intended. And if I still have more, say tomatoes, whenever I'm done, I can make something else with the rest of it. I can make overage of something else. So making sure that I hit my mark on what I need, how many jars I historically have needed. And then I put in here some things I have learned from some of the recipes that we've made throughout the year, and like tweaks. I want to remind myself to like change an ingredient in this or add a little bit more of this, or, you know, instead of blending in the blender, let's strain it and then, you know, not try to incorporate the skins or seeds or something of something in, that kind of thing. Noting to myself from this past year and previous years to remember what worked best. And then as we're opening and using the jars of preserved product, you know, what we are noting as a family that we prefer. Also, like when I'm done with a seed packet, I don't throw them away. I tend to put them inside of next year's or the end of the year, the end of the season's part of my book, so that I remember that I want to order them again, or at least contemplate, am I going to order this again? Look at my notes and see, did I say, yeah, I wanted to? Okay, those worked out. I'm going to order some more of those. Talking about the recipes and thinking forward in my journal to prepare myself and know how much I need to grow for the garden. These are two, when it comes to books, these are my 2 recipe books. I use this a lot, Ball Home Preserving, and then the Complete Home Canning from the USDA as kind of starting points on some of them, or like complete, like some of the recipes are just out of this world awesome. Some of them, like I said, I've noted I want to tweak something on them, which they do say don't tweak your ingredients on some things. Just saying, You know, if you get to a point where you feel comfortable tweaking, tweak away. Also, with my journal, I do keep my calendar. I'll either find it like in my journal or in my seed starting box with all of my seeds. But I've been finding that actually just putting it right inside my journal works out really good for me. Like that. All right, guys, I hope this video was helpful, gave you some ideas maybe. And if there's something different that you do with your garden journal that you think might help me or anybody that watches this channel, please let us know in the comments. All right, guys, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Hit that like button and share this with anybody that you think that could get their garden journal game going. All right, thanks, guys. Have a good one.